got there eventually. So thank you. First of all, I just wanted to preface my poem with some thank yous. First of all, to Professor Friedman and Professor Patch, my two advisors in this project. The best advisors anybody could ever ask for. And I owe a lot of this to their support and their guidance, so I appreciate that. I also wanted to thank my family, a lot of whom couldn't be here today, but I'm fortunate enough to have my dad here, so I'm really glad he was able to make the trip. That's also why it's being recorded, so they can all see it too. And I want to thank all of you guys for coming. I really appreciate all the support you guys give me, whether you knew I was doing this or not. You were still very supportive of me, which is very much appreciated. And I also wanted to give out one final dedication for this performance to my Uncle Skip, who passed away this year, but it was at his house that we came up with this idea. And so one final thought. So I was hoping you guys as an audience could part of the reason I wanted some people to sit on the floor was I was hoping that you would sort of focus more on the words that I was saying rather than what I was doing and what Matt and I are doing. So it's more about, the spoken words. I'm hoping that you let the words I'm going to say sort of flow over you and sort of appreciate that rather than sort of what I'm doing physically or whatnot. So I'm going to give this a shot. So thank you all again for coming. And before we start the poem, I wanted to have a moment of silence for all those who were affected by the September 11th attacks, as well as all other terrorist attacks.
As the sun now sets behind the hill, a blind old man walks alone from his home. He goes to the center of the town. The village waits for him beside the fire. They wait, each one next to his neighbor. The beggar sits with his Lord as he sings his new song about these folk far away. The people see themselves now in the song. He speaks with the wisdom of the ages, and he sings with the might of ancient swords. A tale of the future comes to life, but this same saga has been sung forever.
Help me muse, let us now tell this sad tale. The day the face of liberty witnessed a September morning. That dark day when it seemed time was stopped in its ceaseless flow. The mighty lady wounded in her heart, she knelt in fear, her pride torn asunder. Thus pierced by many wounds, forced to endure bolts from the sky she could not hold at bay. From sea to shining sea, they held their breath, huddled masses, yearning for answers. They raised their voices, shouting in disbelief, who did this deed? Why would they cause such harm? His story I will now recite today, Mohamed Atta's road, which led to this fire, which burned a path across the ocean. The answer today to you I'll supply, why he convinced himself that day to fly. 5 a.m. September 11th, 2001, the Comfort Inn near Portland, Jetport, Maine, Mohamed El Amir Atta pauses in his prayers. Time to begin the final preparations. The final day of his life, the greatest day of his life, his destiny fulfilled. He rose to his feet. The sores of repentance and the spoils recited, washing his face, The angels shall seek forgiveness for him. Reciting the morning prayers. Abdul Aziz Al-Omari, his fellow jihadi, has already begun. Enunciate every syllable perfectly, no mistakes. Omari prays too quickly, he corrects him. 5:33 a.m., they are running late. Moving quickly to the rented Nissan Altima, the car won't start. He curses the Jews. The car starts. Arriving at the airport, his bags are delayed. Special security measures, inconsequential. He makes it through security. 5:53 a.m., they are in their seats. What are the others doing? Ziad is probably calling his wife, fool. She's too Western, too American, an unnecessary obstacle in our plans. She pines for him back in Germany. Ziad hasn't called her in months. Good. This is no place for women, especially not her. 6 a.m. The commuter flight to Boston takes off. His hopes soar with the plane. They will all die today. Those who cloud the minds of believers, usurpers of order. A perfect world is nigh at hand. His wedding is today. Eternal blessings, mingling with the prophets and martyrs forever. He smiles. Destiny reaches out her hand. A child screams in a nearby seat. He sees his mother wears a tank top. Harlot. He thinks back to his own childhood. Born in the Nile Delta, Amir, the curse of men, moved with his family in the 1970s to El Malsha Street in Abdin, a quarter of Cairo that had seen better days by the time Amir and his family arrived. Perhaps Amir's father chose Abdin on account of its squalor, as it allowed the lawyer to purchase a large double flat with enough space for the curse of men and his two sisters to have their own rooms. Such privacy was a rarity in Cairo, as the urban masses lived almost on top of each other. Work in Mohamed Kamiz's nearby auto body shop spilled over into the middle of the street. Amir's father kept the family strictly isolated. Even during Ramadan, when families typically broke the fast with friends and neighbors, Amir's family never had any visitors or never went to visit anyone themselves. In fact, Amir's family was fairly secular, observing holidays but not attending mosque or engaging in any prayer. The only religious fervor in the curse of men's home was the worship of success and achievement. Amir's father timed the distance it would take for him and his sisters to walk home from school, and if they were late, they would have to answer for it. While Amir's fellow classmates relaxed on street corners chewing pistachios, the curse of men sat in his room alone and studied. He succeeded in earning admission to Cairo University like his sisters, and after performing well in his first year, he earned admittance into the engineering department, the most venerable at the school. From there, he entered into the architecture program, the most competitive sub-discipline of engineering. Amir excelled at the mathematical aspect of architecture, but fell short in the design aspect. On account of this, he failed to gain admission to Cairo University's graduate program and was thus forced to make an important decision. Amir's father thought the boy was too soft, too attached to his mother. And after Amir wowed some German friends of his father with his command of the German language, his father sent him to Hamburg on a whim. And thus, the curse of men was abroad and totally alone. 6:45 a.m. Logan Airport, Boston, Massachusetts. No more reflection, only action. Phase 2 has begun. 6:52 a.m. Marwan Al-Shei calls, preparing to board United Airlines Flight 175 for Los Angeles. Everything is on schedule. 7 a.m. He checks into American Airlines Flight 11. Satam Al-Sukami and the brothers Wal and Walid Al-Shari arrive. The team is assembled. He checks for his Mason utility knife. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had been right. This was too easy. 7:35 a.m. He sits down in business class 8D. Omari and Satam sit nearby. The brothers sit in first class. 7:59 a.m. The plane takes off. Soon they will take action. He steels himself for the moment, remembering the cause of his hatred for the Americans. Amir arrived in Hamburg in the summer of 1992 to stay with the friends of his father that he had so dazzled back in Cairo. Alone and abroad, the tireless one turned more towards Islam than he ever had previously, praying 5 times a day and keeping a strictly halal diet. He frequently argued with his hosts about religion and eventually wore out his welcome due to his closed-mindedness. In between verbal tirades against the landlady's unmarried daughter for her immoral ways and sleeveless blouses, Amir smiled and played games with her little girl. It was the only time any of them could remember seeing him happy. He enrolled in the Technical University of Hamburg-Harburg to study architecture, moving into the dormitories at the university. He had little success fitting in there as well, once being dragged out by students to see a screening of Disney's The Jungle Book, and upon witnessing the pre-movie conversation, was heard muttering under his breath about chaos, and left the theater in a huff. The tireless one also openly complained about the act of eating, saying that it was boring. His routine was to skin and cook a huge pile of potatoes and eat them gradually over the course of a week, pulling them in and out of the refrigerator without heating them up. Amir established himself as a total introvert, a man who owned no books and disliked music and movies. While things were difficult for him socially in Hamburg, Amir excelled at the university, earning high praise from his professors for his studious ways. The tireless one began to dream big about returning to Egypt as an Arab to Arabia, intent on bettering the lives of his countrymen through the construction of better neighborhoods. That is when everything changed. Amir traveled back to Cairo in the summer of 1995 on a grant from the Karl Duisberg Society, a German think tank that promotes redevelopment and preservation. The tireless one and two colleagues traveled to the area of Cairo known as the Islamic City to study the plans that the Egyptian government had for this cluster of ancient monuments, modern marketplaces, and medieval architecture. Amir learned that the Egyptian government planned to restore the Islamic City by evicting all of its current residents, renovating the buildings, and hiring troops of actors to play the very residents they had just evicted. The nearby city of the dead, home to centuries of Cairo's deceased residents and thousands of squatters living amongst the tombs, would also be renovated. Amir looked on as earth movers tore up the ancient burial ground, destroying a precious piece of Cairo's history. Amir and his colleagues attempted to discuss their concerns with the municipality, however, they did not understand the problem. It's a good idea, they said. Amir became disillusioned with the Egyptian government. He had already experienced difficulties trying to find a job in Egypt, having issues fitting into a system in which jobs were handed down from one generation to the next. Egypt's ambitious and inexpensive system of higher education was pumping out more and more well-educated people who could not find work. Egyptians with graduate degrees were 32 times more likely to be unemployed than illiterate peasants. Amir railed against the Egyptian government to his colleagues, arguing that Mubarak's eagerness to appease the Americans had led to the creation of this Islamic Disneyland. The tireless one cloaked his anger in the garb of Islam, a transition noticed by several people. As he talked with Mohamed in front of his auto body shop a few weeks later while the mechanic was repairing his car, Amir excused himself to answer the call to prayer. It was the first time Khamis had ever seen any member of Amir's family acknowledge the call to prayer. The tireless one took his first pilgrimage to Mecca that very year. 8:14 a.m. His time has come. The fasten seatbelt sign is turned off. While he stabbed two flight attendants, they grabbed the key to open the cockpit. "We have cleared the way for you, brother." He moves swiftly towards the cockpit. A man rises from behind to stop him. Satam stabs him. The fires of holy vengeance burn in his eyes. The fires of September. Lead us to Allah. Omar and Satam spray the mace. Passengers flee to the rear of the plane. They cannot outrun fate. He takes the controls. Upon his return from making Hajj, Amir had finished all of his requirements for receiving his graduate degree except for completing his dissertation. However, he lost all interest in his academics at this point and began to frequent the mosques in Hamburg, growing a beard as a sign of his religious fervor. He developed a circle of friends at the Al-Quds Mosque, the most radical in Hamburg, which he invited back to his dormitory for dinner, frequently cooking soup. He began to teach informal courses in Islam at Al-Quds. The crooked counseling one frequently accosted students for their wardrobe, called music the work of the devil, and when one woman once came to his course, he told a male student to tell her father that she was unwelcome in his class. He began teaching around 80 students and ended up with only a handful. Amir constantly criticized his newfound friends over their praying style, so much so that some would leave the mosque early to avoid his persistent harangues. Amir of the Crooked Council completely dropped off the map, according to the university, not contacting them at all for 2 whole years. He did, however, teach seminars at the think tank, which awarded him the fellowship to go to the Islamic City. Amir came to the lectures incredibly prepared, gave them, and then left. He engaged in almost no personal conversation and never attended any of the social events held in conjunction with the seminar. One student remarked that there seemed to be a wall between Amir and the class. Amir and Ramzi bin al-Shib, otherwise known as Omar, became the ringleaders of a fluid group of youths devoted to Islam. They courted other Arabs more than proselytized, offering to explain passages of the Quran and attending study groups throughout Hamburg, making themselves known to those who might be willing to join them in their cause. All they talked about was religion and life.